But if you walk away, nothing ever change. Hear me when I say let's make a night to remember. Let's celebrate from now till forever. This time we'll make a night to remind us we only have one life. Gotta live it out loud. Where you wanna go? scars. I'll brush you off just like the dust upon my shoulder. I have a hunch of who you are. Believe it or not, I got the strength to blow you over. I'm a hurricane, I'm bringing thunder and rain. I'm a hurricane if you get in my way. I'm a hurricane, always on top of my game. I'm a hurricane, I'm trying to get in my way. Hurricane, I'm bringing thunder and rain. I'm a hurricane if you get in my way. I'm a hurricane, always on top of my game. I'm a hurricane, I'm trying to get in my way. I'm a hurricane, I'm bringing thunder and rain. I'm a hurricane if you get in my way. I'm a hurricane, always on top of my game. I'm a hurricane, I'm trying to get in my way. Hurricane, I'm bringing thunder and rain. I'm a hurricane if you get in my way. I'm a hurricane, always on top of my game. I'm a hurricane, I'm trying to get in my way.
I've been losing sleep, what to do? Could somebody come and take me away? I've been in the deep without you, and I got it in my head night and day. But we are one step closer. We're all in this together. Put your hand in mine. Yeah, we are one step closer. Can you feel it, baby? It's the end of the line. It looks like we made it. Let's get it on. We got it going, moving on. Oh, oh. It looks like we made it. Let's get it on. We got it going, stand strong. Oh, oh. It looks like we. It looks like we. Yeah, it looks like we made it. Let's get it on. We got it going, stand strong. Oh, oh. It looks like we made it. Wake me from this dream I've been in. I need to get in closer to you. I swear you might succeed. Oh baby, I've been waiting for you. Now we are one step closer. We're all in this together. Put your hand in mine. Yeah, we are one step closer. Can you feel it, baby? It's the end of the line. It looks like we made it. Let's get it on. We got it going, moving on. Oh, oh. It looks like we made it. Let's get it on. We got it going, stand strong. Oh, oh. It looks like we.
What is up, Dyna-Dose fam? I am your host / co-host, Sean Ringrose, shouting it out. What's up? There's a bunch of you in chat. Chat is rolling, and I love it. Joining me tonight is none other than, I've called him ultra special guest now for like 3 days, so I guess you're the ultra special guest. Hattie Zabet, I'm gonna butcher it. I'm gonna shut up. Hattie Z.
Oh man.
Hattie Z.
Oh man.
Hattie Z. Hattie Z. That was terrible.
It's Addie's about for you, man.
Hattie's a bod. There we go. Let's go.
Yep.
Expert Dash. That's what we'll call you tonight. Expert on the dash, for sure.
That's great.
But you definitely have knowledge of Dose, and a passing knowledge of Dynamo. Which is good because we feel, we fill each other. Let me rephrase that. We help cover the gaps that each other may have in certain areas of knowledge. The double D's. Oh man, there is so much to talk about. Woo!
Yeah, that's how that works.
That would be filling up both of the gaps. This is supposed to be a PG podcast, not anymore. So obviously Mark goes away. No, he's this week he's got there's some festival thing going on and he's prepping for that, and there's other stuff going on and he's prepping for that. My favorite director of Dash Affairs. Hattie, I believe that's a shout out to you from none other than Mela.
Oh, thanks, Mela. You rock.
C goes Gen Orange After Dark. Yeah, we hit that right at 7:30. No minute later. So what are we talking about this week? Well, we're talking obviously Dynamo. There was a article that came out about Kenny Bundy. Should he be the next head coach? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the successes that Kenny Bundy has had, kind of in short form format, because we're going to focus very heavily this week on Dash and NWSL, of course, because there's some big news in both fronts. But we'll also talk a little bit of Dyna-Dose very quickly, making sure to give the love that they deserve for making the playoffs and making it to the semifinals against St. Louis FC. And then we will, of course, dive into Dash, making history as it is, and hosting their first ever playoff match in the NWSL playoffs against KC Current. That's coming up in another week from now, the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Henny?
Yeah, October 16th.
We will run through the details of that match, where you can buy tickets, because we know if you don't have tickets yet, you need to buy them. And then we're going to talk NWSL. I don't know if you guys heard. It's such a small thing, so why would you? There was a massive investigation that released its findings, known as the Yates investigation, related to harassment, sexual assault, and a host of other things out of women's soccer in general, from the youth level all the way up to the national and even international level. And boy, there is some stuff to unpack from that. We'll dive into that a little bit later as well. And as always, guys, you're free and welcome to join in and offer questions and thoughts in chat, and we will do our best to get to them while we're talking. So let's get to it, because we got a lot to talk about. That last two subjects is probably going to cover like an hour's worth of talk, so this is going to be a pretty heavy WOSO show. So if you don't like WOSO, GTFO, I don't care. This is a WOSO show too. Sorry, Mark, it is a WOSO show, no matter what you may think or want to think.
Or it's time to start liking it. Get them on board.
That's right. Look, I brought Jen Cooper on the show a few months back, and we did our best to try to help Mark see the light. And I believe he's seen the light. He definitely has an appreciation for WOSO, but there's still a little bit more to go with that. But let's dive into Dynamo. Kenny Bundy, interim head coach. Nothing obviously has been stated as far as long-term tenure. But Dynamo Theory, our author Dustin Richardson put out an article, and the title says it all. Kenny Bundy is the right choice for Dynamo head coach. The byline or tagline is Bundy is the right hire for the job of permanent head coach going into the 2023 season. I disagree. I vehemently will disagree with this. And it's not that I don't think Kenny Bundy would be a decent hire. I do think he would be. But right now, with where this team is and has been, it would be the third head coach that would have come from the youth ranks in a row. The first two, not the greatest of tenures while here. It would be another instance of what feels like almost a letdown in a coaching search. I mean, they're supposed to be doing a coaching search, and instead that would be more like, well, we did a coaching search, but you're going to get the guy that everybody would have been okay with either way. There's a lot more to break down from that article, including he talked about that guys like Tata Martino, Marcelo Bielsa, similar guys to that nature and stature, even Greg Berhalter, those guys aren't going to come to the Dynamo because we're the Dynamo. It's not a destination club for within MLS circles, or let alone within international circles. I take definite umbrage with that in the terms of, I think that this has to become one. And in order to become one, you have to at least make the phone calls. Here's the difference. Previous regimes never made the phone calls. They waited for people to come to them. They believed that people needed to be interested in the job before you approached. If you've watched Welcome to Wrexham, which, Hattie, I'm going to throw it at you. Have you watched Welcome to Wrexham?
I'm on episode 1.
Oh, bro, that's okay. It's okay. Get to about 5 or 6 and you'll know where I'm coming from on this. But there's an episode where they make a play, they being Ryan Reynolds, and actually really it comes more from Rob McElhenney. They make a play or a push for a pretty well-known coach that has a very solid pedigree in terms of taking teams in the National League up through the ranks and helping build them into longer-term powerhouses. And I think it's very fair to say that it, in order to acquire or grab that coach, what had to happen was Rob, as co-owner, had to call the guy and basically say, hey, let's talk for a bit on the phone. I know you've already said you're really not interested, but I think we should talk. I want you to understand, where we're coming from and why. I tell you that, to me, if I was a coach that had some clubs that were interested that I had applied for, but a team called me and the owner called me, or Pat called me as GM, if they called me and they said to me, even if I'm a renowned coach, and said, hey, we are very passionate that you're the guy that we want. Here's the situation. Here's what we're trying to build. Here's what we're trying to do. We believe you're the guy. If they put in that hard press instead of this namby-pamby approach of, nah, you got to apply to us first, you got to come to us and prove that you want it. I mean, if it's a coach at that level, man, you got to be willing to go. Go ahead, Hattie.
Yeah, you really have to show what you're about. I mean, we talk about how Houston wants to be, a premier place in the MLS. We want to see change, and really, as much as we can bring it as fans, it starts up top. It starts with Pat, it starts with Ted. You have to reach out. You have to, show you what you're about, and the fact that we see Pat and Asher like flying out to go meet people. It takes that kind of effort, and even more so than that to this isn't supposed to be meet you halfway. This is like full on headhunting. You have to give it your best effort. You have to sell them what you want to be, where you want to see them. You want, because some of these big name coaches, they want their name up in the lights. Marcel Bielsa was, he did great with Leeds. He earned the love of everyone from Leeds to UK, and then everyone in Argentina. You need to have that, you need to get these people in. You want them to be like, I love Houston. I'm going to die here in H-Town. That's the kind of energy that, the front office or like whoever's in charge has to bring in order to bring a good coach, someone with this kind of experience.
I see you're getting a shout out from Robin Davis. She says, it's Hattie with a smiley face.
Hi,
and Mello repeats, Hattie. Everybody loves Hattie. We know that. Hattie gets more love than I do. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, probably true. I'm not going to lie.
Deservedly so,
Absolutely. Hey, I will back it up. Deservedly so, 100%. Nobody gives hugs like Hattie gives hugs. That almost sounds like a rap.
Oh, man.
No lie.
Only Wiz Khalifa raps it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Giuseppe. Oh, that makes me happy. It's Sean. Oh, thanks, Robin. Oh, the love is mutual. I promise you guys, the love is genuinely mutual. But yeah, talking Kenny Bundy, some of the other things that were mentioned is his style of play, his understanding of the players, his capability to capture the locker room. And, even though he's kind of a rah-rah coach and some veteran players don't necessarily, follow that or don't necessarily buy into that. He's found buy-in from all of the players, even the veterans. I think that. I appreciate that, Mela. Thank you. But I appreciate the sentiment behind that, and I think that is a sentimental level pick. But I think the reality is it's kind of like, and Hattie, we were talking about this before, but it's kind of like the Dash situation. You have a coach in Sarah Loudon who is proving herself at the NWSL level. She's doing very well in the first, 4, 5, 6 matches of the season, how many ever it was, before the Dash announced and named that they had brought over or were bringing over Juan Carlos Amoros to be the head coach, with her sticking around as an assistant. I really feel like, similar to that situation, that's maybe the approach that the Dynamo need to take. How do you feel about that? Does that make sense to you?
I think that's a great point. I think that's something that the Dash did. You're right. The Dash did it, and they've done it with incredible success. And hey, I can only read what's, based on what's been said in the media, what's been said online, and what we see. But it seems like they have a great functional partnership. They work together, and for the first time, the Dash are in the playoffs. So maybe the Dash laid out the blueprints of what the Dynamo need to do.
Yeah, that's kind of a huge point. Is that the other piece to that puzzle, right? Is Sarah and Juan Carlos Amoros are both very tactically minded and tactically intelligent individuals and coaches. They understand and see the game. I wouldn't say necessarily similarly. They have different opinions on certain things, but they both see it at such an insanely detailed level. They see a lot of the small things, small changes that they can implement and make, from even the way that players are playing a specific position to players playing in different positions, all the way through formational setups. And something that was even mentioned in the article about Bundy is his tendency to be able to break down opposition game tape, or just the opposition in general, and point to things that are weaknesses that the opposition have that the Dynamo can exploit. And to me, that's very similar to what I've seen the Dash do throughout this season. And to me, that speaks to another reason why I think Bundy as an assistant coach makes a lot of sense. You can still have that with somebody else who is just as tactically minded, and they can mesh together. And I think that can work really, really well in MLS. It might be one of the first times that we've seen, outside of Tata Martino and maybe one or two other international coaches, be able to be successful in MLS. Go ahead, Hattie.
Now, Robin brings up a good point in the chat about, whether it's too early to tell for, the whole Bundy effect. And this kind of made me think about another point, in the fact that, would Bundy be okay with the same role that Loudon is to JCA, finding a coach that would be willing to have that kind of partnership? Are we sure that it's not just something that's unique for the Dash, or if this is something that's truly plausible, that's something that, a dream team that we could bring for the Dynamo, that in which both can work together and, create a playoff pushing team?
Yeah, I think I remember when Pat was on Glenn's show a few weeks ago, not the most recent one, but prior to that, I think Pat mentioned that when Bundy was given the interim title, it was made very clear to Bundy that, he would be able to apply, or put his name in the hat for the head coach position permanently at the end of the season. But the Dynamo were very much not looking to go that direction. I almost get the sense from what I've heard from Pat and what I've heard insider side, that the Dynamo have already pegged one or two guys that they were going to heavily chase after to try to nab, because they are very interested in getting a guy that's proven. And Bundy, for everything that we love him for, the one thing that you have to admit about him is that he's not a proven head coach in MLS. Yes, he's won a small string of matches. He's won 2 matches. He's coached out of 4 matches so far. 1 loss, 1 draw, and 2 wins, 1 on the road. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a fantastic record for an interim head coach. But we also know from watching this team that this team was better than they were playing under Nagamura. And I have to wonder if maybe there's a little bit of kind of the knee-jerk reaction of, well, this guy's better than Nagamura, so he's got to be the next guy. Go ahead, Hattie.
Yeah, there's definitely a point to that. I mean, the players themselves just look brighter in general. Like, you see them, more, you can see the excitement when they bring it on the pitch. You definitely, it felt dull when you put him in comparison to where the last 5 games before Nagamura was sacked, and then where we are right now. And maybe that's just the new coach effect. That's just something that you see in most clubs. You fire your coach, and then you see good performance after that. And that could just be the case. I mean, but Bundy has had some successes here with Dynados, and a light success so far with the Dynamo. I mean, we pulled away with some wins that I don't think many people expected. So, I mean, I guess that's why you were having this conversation of Bundy for head coach.
Look, he's had 5. He's going to have 5 matches after the LA match this weekend on Sunday here in Houston. If if the team goes out and wins against LA Galaxy and plays spoiler for LA Galaxy, I don't think we have a chance of knocking them out of the playoffs necessarily, but a chance to keep them from maybe hosting a first round matchup or something like that seems very fun. But the other flip side of that is also, everything related to Kenny Bundy. Again, I'm going to come back to this, but it kind of centers on this whole thing of how many matches do you have to give a guy before you start to, before you kind of look at him seriously. I think that Pat is looking at him seriously to some extent. But again, if Pat's already had a guy or 2 or 3 guys in mind, or has a specific mold for a coach in mind, if Bundy doesn't fit that, then yeah, he's a plan B type player, type coach. But he's definitely not the first choice. He's not going to be the second choice. Probably not going to be the 5th choice, to be honest. I mean, yeah, he's a good fallback plan, but outside of that, I just struggle to see how putting Kenny Bundy as your coach for next season or beyond is a wise move at this point in Pat's tenure. Again, a GM who has not had a good successful record with the Dynamo so far. Granted, only one season, give or take. But a guy who it's very clear that he's been given a lot of pressure from Ted, the owner. And I have to wonder if that's going to play a little bit into this. And, if you're Pat and you're sitting there and you have to choose between Kenny Bundy to saddle your horse with Kenny Bundy or a proven head coach from another league, maybe in France or maybe in Spain, maybe it's a La Liga B team or, a Serie B team or, whatever. I think you have to accept that if you're Pat, you're probably going that route before you go Kenny Bundy.
Yeah, I kind of think that I know a lot of people, and I like to call the Dynaverse, have been upset with Pat and his recent choices, and I'm not going to use this as a huge excuse for him. I mean, on one hand, Nagamura has more wins than Tad did for in both of his tenures, in both years in his tenure. But I think it's just I have faith in Pat in general. I think he wants Houston to succeed. It's not just his job on the line. There's a little bit of pride for himself, and I think a head coach mistake is a big one, but nonetheless, it's one mistake. I don't think any of the players they brought in so far were anything to shirk at. I mean, I can understand that Thiago, he came out and said it himself, but I think so far there's been a good movement forward, and sometimes you got to make a mistake to, you got to crack a few eggs before you make yourself a nice Dynamo pie.
Absolutely, 100%. There's a few shout outs for different names throughout the throughout the show so far, and I'm sure there will be more. And there's obviously been plenty thrown out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. I've seen plenty of people responding to Dynamo posts on there with various names. I think guys like Dominic Torrent, who coached New York Red Bulls, in the academy, and I think he was a season as like assistant coach with New York Red Bulls. Had a pretty good record with them before moving overseas. I think there's guys out there that just fit the mold that Pat's probably looking for. And I think we just need to let him do his work. I would be upset if Pat takes into account what we as fans have to say, especially those fans who are pushing for Bundy to be the hire. I hope that Pat is doing his due diligence this time and actually doing as much reaching out to various coaches that he would love to see coach the Dynamo. And again, Mark and I have talked about this before. As a GM or as a person in that position where you're hiring a guy, sometimes you have to be willing to make the first phone call. You can't just rely that the guy that you want is going to be willing to put the application in. Maybe the guy feels that putting in an application is above him, and so he doesn't feel like he should have to do that. And there are some coaches out there that, frankly, they shouldn't have to. And you don't know if you have a shot until you at least give it a shot. Give them a call and find out, or give their agent a call and find out. So hopefully Pat is doing that legwork, doing that groundwork. I have to think the fact that he's in Europe right now and has been is a sign that maybe they're working on something already. Maybe everything points to they probably already had something in the works or had some calls that they had made. So I'm hopeful that that's the case, and we see something pretty decent. Maybe it's similar to Juan Carlos Amoros. It's not a name that necessarily was going to shock anybody in terms of, oh man, the Dash got that big of a name. It's not going to be that type of guy, I don't think, but it's going to be somebody who comes with a pedigree and somebody who just comes with the capability and intelligence to be able to carry the team in terms of coaching. And that is something that the Dynamo have sorely lacked. Again, getting a lot closer with Bundy, but again, I just don't feel that Bundy is the right answer there. I don't want to beat this horse any more than we already have. But let's talk about Dynados, because we got about 5 minutes before I really want to start talking Dash. But Dynados, so they played St. Louis FC this past weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Last weekend? Does that sound right?
I think it was 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago. I don't know. I'm losing track.
That sounds about right.
Been a busy couple of weeks, to say the least. But they played St. Louis FC. They were up 2-0 going into, I believe, halftime, surrendered a goal late, and then a second goal late. And then, unfortunately, it went to PKs, and they lost in PKs. For their first season in MLS Next Pro, I thought they played exceptionally well throughout the season, especially given some of the drastic changes that had to be made at various points in the season. Players moving from Dynados up to the Dynamo senior team, getting no minutes with the senior team, and then going back to play with Dynados and having to kind of, shift back into that. And then Bundy at the end of the season getting called up essentially to the Dynamo as interim head coach, leaving them, the Dynados our team with the former assistant as their new head coach. Sad to see them bow out. It was the semifinals, and MLS Next Pro is a very short playoff setup, but sad to see them go out, but very proud of how they played the season, very proud of how they ended the season and ended up their season. And we look to next season for even bigger and better things. I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think there's a lot from just a youth perspective within the Dynamo organization to be excited about. Any particular thoughts on the Dynados season, Dynados playoff match, anything like that?
Yeah, there was tons of that was going through my head when I was watching it, and just like if any of the Dynados kids are watching or hearing, I just hope they don't let 30 minutes of one game define their whole season, because
Agreed.
They were flying. They were just flying throughout the season, and everyone was wishing this was the team that we were watching at PNC, like on prime time. Like everyone wanted these kids out and about, balling out. It's just, they played good football, and they really kept their heads up high. And, especially in that final match, they played going to the halftime. Like everyone was thought, okay, this is in the bag, they're going to go all the way. And they really had that kind of spirit. And it was a little disappointing for that, for them to let that slip from them, but it happens. That's the sport.
Do you feel like that, let's call it slippage, that slippage, as it were, do you feel like that is becoming a bit of a Dynamo identity almost in a way? It's becoming a common theme that we've seen from the Dynamo in the last few seasons, letting matches slip late. Do you feel like that played into it at all? And I'm only asking because I actually didn't get to watch much of the match. I think I was probably in Seattle or traveling from Seattle.
Yeah, I think it's just a bit of I can't say if this is something that's, every coach has had this, but I think in the last few coaches that have both coached the Dynamo and also now Dynados, in the end, it just seems like at the end, once the going gets good, okay, it's time to, defend our house, which Anyone who knows me, I am very much anti parking the bus. I think, trying to lock up the defense allows for more, like the more chances the ball is in your side of the half, is more opportunities for them to score. So I think you just got to keep, your knives sharp. You keep coming at them, even if it's the 85th minute, you keep trying to score the next goal. I just think, that kind of mindset that we've had lately, and uncorrelated, correlated, however you want to take it, it's a mentality that I think we need to break, and we need a coach that, whether it's for both Dynados or the Dynamo, you need someone, wants to have a proactive approach to winning a game, like whether it's like in the first half, second half, or, at the end of the day, you play 90 minutes and you have to, put in an effort to win every minute of the 90 minutes.
Do you feel that, shifting gears a little bit, do you feel that Juan Carlos Amoros is a sit back and defend coach when it comes to having a lead, or is he a coach that just says, screw that, we're going for it, we're going to put the foot on the throat, so to speak, and we're going to snap that neck?
He's kind of got me confused in that sense, and it's a little annoying. And I'm just gonna I'll get more into that later.
I mean, we're there. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, there are times where he's been like that. Okay, it's time to defend, and we just we park the bus, or we kind of go full 180 on whatever we're doing, and then there are times where he goes and puts 5 attackers in right in 3 attacking subs, and it's just he kind of goes on both ends, and there are times he's successful. So I can't say anything to or for it, but there are times it's just come on, that's not. It's just that I never feel like that's how it works. You're never supposed to go all in at the 80th minute by just putting every attacking player you have on your squad onto the pitch. It's just there needs to be a good balance. And I think he's, finding it as he goes. I mean, otherwise, I don't think we would be where we are. It's just there have been some games that he just sat there and I'm just my guy, just no words, just my hands just up and around.
So I assume you're going to the match on the 16th, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you weren't, I would have been extremely sad. So let's talk about Houston Dash notching their first ever home playoff berth in NWSL, but also hosting their first ever NWSL playoff match as well against the KC Current. Details. What time is the match? Okay. Give me details.
Yeah. So just for the quick details, it's on October the 16th, which is Sunday at 4 p.m. And if you don't have a ticket already, you should. But the best way to get the ticket, you can get it straight through SeatGeek right now. It's open to all fans to buy. And, it's 713 night. It's $7 beer or $7 tickets, $1 hot dogs, $3 beers for anyone who, for the first time they're hearing about 713. So I don't think there's any excuse for anyone to not seize this opportunity because who is selling a $7 ticket for a playoff game in any league?
Maybe the SaberCats. Maybe.
I can't speak for that. So
I'm pretty sure they're $13, but
maybe we get Robin to speak on that. But it's going to be a big game. It's happening in a week and a half, and there's not much to say in that sense, but keep an eye out for details for the pregame or for any sort of tailgate. There's still talks in the work, but right now everyone's trying to spread the word, fill up the stadium, pack your house, bring anyone who's got a pulse, just bring it in. Let's just show the Dash some love.
Yeah, Robin even said SaberCats are even more expensive than $7. There you go. I mean, you can't look. It's playoffs, it's soccer, and it's the Houston Dash for $7. I mean, you really can't go wrong. And if parking's an issue, park somewhere else and take the light rail over.
Yeah, I mean, people have seen. I know a lot of people just come in for the Dynamo on some games that we knew that it was just never going to happen. But hey, I think if you show, it's just about showing the city some love. They we're talking the Dash. They need us. They need us to come out and hey, There's no. I think the Dash have limited every single excuse that they could have come up for why you shouldn't come out on such a day.
Yeah, Sunday evening too. I mean, that just fits everything perfectly. It's not a super late match, so you don't have the excuse of, well, it ends too late and I got work the next morning. I don't GTE. I don't care.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's Sunday evening, which means that you have no excuse about traffic. So yeah, I agree with you. Like all the excuses that people would have, the Dash have done everything that they can to eliminate those excuses, and I think a lot of that probably plays from the aspect of, the Dash front office, the business side. They're trying to make this an opportunity to really invigorate a fan base, and try to draw as many fans of soccer to the women's side, to the Dash in particular, because we've got a winner on our hands, and it wasn't that long ago that they won Challenge Cup, and a lot of people showed up to show their appreciation for that. So you have to think that this is probably going to be a pretty solid turnout. I've seen some people speculate 10 to 13,000. I think that's probably fair. But I also believe that it's entirely possible if people get off their butts and buy a $7 ticket. Again, $7. Come on, people. A $7 ticket. There's every possibility that they could sell out this match in the upper bowl too. And why wouldn't you want to? There's just not a reason.
Yeah, I think we talk about waking the sleeping giant that is the Houston market, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to do so. I mean, our biggest for the Houston Dash, the biggest attendance that they ever had was in 2015, and that was 13,025 people. Can we break that? Hell yeah, I think we can. I think there's everything about this team and doing what they can. I mean, let's talk about this season. This is a historic season by all accounts. From the fact that, we first playoff berth ever, in 9 years. And then after that, we talk about having the most wins under our belt in a season, the most points total we've ever had, 36 points, and their best placement in the regular season being fourth place. I mean, and to be fair, we're tied with fifth and third, so it could have gone either way.
Easily could have gone. Yep.
And on top of that, we've had our first ever away wins against Kansas City this season, and I'm talking about the current, not the the previous one prior to 2015. I just consider everything after 2020 new Dash. It's time for a whole new Dash, as Rachel Daly said when she left. But first ever away wins in Seattle, KC, and then as well as having a positive goal differential, which I know that doesn't sound like much to most, but for a team, you got to look at a team like the Dash, you got to look at every single thing that they've done differently, and it's just we're talking about a whole new life to it, the way that they've brought on the pitch and on the staff. Both on the field pitch and then as well as behind the FO, we're talking about new changes and a positive foot forward. And in 2 games this season, we had the highest attendance in the last 5 years, the home opener and the home ender. So I think, we're talking about a season where there's so much reason for things to be happening in a good sense. There's no reason why we can't go all the way. There's absolutely no reason. It's just we're paving the way and making all these new changes in both on the field and then off the field, and I think with that in mind, we're breaking every sort of record that we could have had, and so to me, it's just that's what's so great about the Houston Dash. That's what's so great about what they're doing. That's a great reason for everyone to come out and see what they're doing, because we're talking about them reaching heights that we always hoped they could, but you know what? Now's the fact. Now's the time that they can.
Yeah, there's some good points being brought up in the chat. The Astros do have a playoff game. It is an away game on October 16th. But this is also the first, the division series. Let's be fair, when it comes to the Astros, we all know they're going to advance to the ALCS. So who really cares about the ALDS? It's just another team for them to step on their throats and break their backs anyways. And the Texans have a bye. So There's no excuse, absolutely no excuse. And come on, the Astros play 5 games in that series, so you miss that one. Okay, go to the next one. They're gonna have at least 2 home matches. So yeah, no excuses, no excuses, no excuses. End of day, $7. Go get your ticket on SeatGeek if you haven't already. Show up and show out.
The only thing left for people to do to have no excuses for Mayor Turner to just close all the highways except for the ones that lead straight to PNC. There's you got every chance. It's time to if you love H Town, it's time to show it. Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, for sure. And no greater opportunity than a first ever home playoff berth. And again, it's if you've never been to a women's soccer match, if you've never been to a Houston Dash match, if you've never been to an NWSL match, you are absolutely missing out if you're only a fan of the Houston Dynamo. Yes, Mark, I'm talking to you specifically. But trust me when I say this, it is absolutely worth going. The atmosphere is incredible. And I guarantee you that it is going to be bouncing that night. And trust me, the players are going to feed off that energy, no doubt about it. So they need everybody to show up. They need everybody to be loud. They need everybody to be obnoxious. I don't even care. Be obnoxious. Go for it. But they need every single person that can show up to show up because they need all the advantage against KC. And speaking of KC, who should we be looking out for in this match? Who do we need to be worried about?
I'm not going to lie to you. KC, if we wanted to say there was a team that truly was a wild card in this league, Kansas City fits it like a dime. We're talking about a team that, has pulled off some of the most, okay, I know we were talking about, Gen Orange After Dark, but shithousery wins. This is the team. Let's look at some of their players. If anyone hasn't been on social media or it's been hiding under a rock, Luau Labonta, one of the team's best players, and also mostly well known for her most famous twerk goal celebration. Yeah, just on a side note, her scoring a penalty, doing something like that's probably one of my biggest nightmares at this point. Don't think I could recover from that. But anyways, she's led the team with 7 goals and 4 assists. So she led the team in both goals and assists. So definitely, a game changer of a player. Probably the closest thing to for people to understand their Rachel Daly.
Yep, absolutely.
Another big one, for people who know her, Cece Kaiser, formerly a Dash player. Ever since she left, she's been making her name in headlights, making a big impact. First with Louisville when she went there, then afterwards when she came to KC, because she also tied for the most goals for KC that season with 7 goals and only lagged behind Labonta with 1 assist less, with being 7 goals and 3 assists. So she's making hell of an impact. And again, Robin brings up a great point. There are times that we pulled away with a win, and other times we struggle. It's just kind of what's going on with what's going on with us in KC. We just kind of lag throughout a whole game. So is it one of the teams that is this the best outcome for us, us playing KC? I mean, I would have preferred Chicago, considering that we, whooped them real well both times over, but these are the cards we're dealt with. And again, George, just to let you know, Sam Ewis got injured at the very beginning of the season, so she wasn't a part of this playoff push, and she probably won't be playing for this game at all.
Darn. So sad.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, again, if you want to think about the injuries there, it's it's sad to say, but we also came out lucky the fact that both their two of their other best players, Lynn Williams, great strike for the United States national team, and has made a lot of impact both there and her time in North Carolina. She's also out for KC as well. The only other threat we could probably have is the fact that they have AD Franch in goal, a former United States women's national team keeper, and I feel like for anyone who's watched the national team, and she made great strides in her time in the 2019 World Cup and then games since. She's always fighting for a starting spot with Alyssa Nair So really, this is not a team to really just snicker at. But also, like, if you think that Casey can drop a stinker, they absolutely can. Another like a big factor that I feel like that's not really known is they do have the most penalties awarded this season. So they know how to draw one. So we got if as long as we play it safe and goal and shut them out, this could be a win, and we can all be celebrating the first ever playoff win in Dash history.
And importantly, there is no VAR in NWSL, so yeah, referees' decisions abound, and they're not usually great. So
yeah, and pro refs, I don't think I've ever heard anything positive about them in the last 2 years for any league. So, if you Dash faithful, if you have another faith, start praying, because so some of these refs, it's just, oh boy.
Yeah, for sure. So there's plenty of players on their side to look out for. Who on the Dash, for those that maybe aren't acquainted with the Dash, what players on the Dash, maybe the unsung heroes of the Houston Dash, who are those players that people should look out for when they go to the game?
That's a hard question for me, because the Dash is one of those teams where I just love every player that, if you sign for the Dash, absolutely, like, you're in my book as one of the best people in the world. But if we had to crack down, Ryan Garris definitely has been popping off in her inaugural season as part of the Dash and in the NWSL.
You think she's going to start, and if so, is she starting at fullback, or is she starting at winger or midfielder? Because she's played all three now.
Yeah, I mean that's the hard question. How's that going to work? And she's played all three, and the thing is, I do think she's going to start. She started in the last few games, and I definitely think that any game that she like a good more than 35 minutes, exactly, she's a game changer. She brings that spark. She's that pacey player you want, but also she attacks like Sanchez. I mean, so Ryan Garris, great. So I mean, Sophie Schmidt, very underrated, but she's been a really pinnacle, I think, in our midfield. And it's just the fact that there's a lot of players that can play multiple positions, and it's just getting that just right kind of works out. But aside from Schmidt and Garris, definitely Viggiano as well. I don't when we first signed her in that trade for Megan Oyster. I'm gonna be honest, I thought, what is this trade? I don't really understand this.
I mean, look,
and she never been more wrong.
It felt like she kind of put the league on notice with that Vigi rocket last week. I mean, what a goal!
Yeah.
What a goal!
I mean, everyone just started realizing, okay, she's there, But even throughout the entire season, she was part of that. You don't think about your defensive midfielders or central midfielders as midfield maestros, but they're the ones pulling it together.
Yep.
And so they've really been very pinnacle. And honestly, you can go on. You can really go on about any of the other players, because a lot of them have just showed up in ways that you wouldn't have expected.
Important question: is Ebony Salmon available for this match?
Yes. Well, God forbid what happens in this English this whole a FIFA window right now for the friendlies. It's just so many players on the English national team have already been injured and sent home. We're talking about at least 3 or 4 of them right now. So to me, I'm praying to God right now, she comes back home safe. It's just.
Yep, Robin said the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's just having a FIFA window right before our playoffs I can go on and about how much I hate it and how much it brings the fear of God into me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But yeah, it just depends if she comes back home healthy and safe. She's popping off. I think she's gonna pop off for that game.
I'm kind of thinking, if Salmon is, we're gonna speak it into existence, as they say. Salmon's going to come back. She's going to be ready and raring, first ever home playoff berth for the Dash. All the players will be, but especially Salmon. I feel like Salmon is going to get at least a brace against KC, and I think that's going to be before halftime. I think this is going to be one of those matches where there's just so much energy among the players, among the fans. And to your point, really the primary focus is just don't give up the fouls in the box. And don't let them have the space, close that space. But if they can do those two things, I think there's every reason to believe, no doubt about every reason to believe, that this team can win and make their way deeper into the playoffs in the NWSL. And that is exciting. But yeah, I got a feeling about Salmon and that brace coming up on the 16th. Giuseppe says she's gonna get a Hattie. I
Yeah.
can, a brace is just it's one goal less than a Hattie, so a Hattie is just a
You know
brace
what?
with an extra goal.
I'll take that. I think she can. I mean, she always plays her best when she's got something to prove, and I think for herself as well as like everyone else, she came to the Dash, scored 8 goals faster than anyone in the league. But now, especially after what Robin brings up the point that she's going to be playing for England as like a starting role. I think she's after that performance, she's going to have something to prove for everybody.
Yep.
This is, she can very but well be like, the number 9 for England, and she needs to show up not only for her national team but here in the league, and she has the opportunity to do so, and I think she knows it, and I think she can take it in stride and take it to the goal, and hopefully a hat for Patrick for all of us to celebrate.
Yeah, that'll be worthy of a beer, that's for sure. Giuseppe, worthy of a beer. All right. So, any other players on the Dash? What about goalkeeper Jane Campbell? I mean, she's obviously not unsung. Everybody knows who she is. But talk about somebody who doesn't get in my personal opinion, the respect that she deserves. Jane Campbell, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jane, it's just hard to say like unsung, because to me she's our legend, like our new legend. I mean, she's the highest, she has the most caps on the team versus anyone. She just played our 100th game for the Dash, and I think it's hard to imagine like the team with, like, you think of the Dash, like everyone thinks like Sam and Maria, and that's great. I think Jane Campbell first thing.
Yeah.
And she's in clutch in so many different games, and I think like the games that we've given up, it's always been like just a little like your brain just kind of like pauses for a second, and it's just like that happens.
Yep.
I don't think she made very like little mistakes throughout the season, and then like just because of that, I think she's a great player. She's great for us, and I think she understands that, this is, she even said it, that, this is our first playoff game. I think she's going to focus up, and, she's going to save every goal she gets thrown at her.
Yeah, let's hope. Because if she can save every goal thrown at her, then you know what? That means the Dash win, because at some point she's going to have, we're going to have to get one before she gives one up if she saves everyone that thrown at her.
I mean, it's the age-old story of something's got to give.
Something's got to give, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it won't be Jane. All right, let's talk defenders, because, you've named a lot of attacking players, a lot of midfield players. I'll give you Sophie Schmidt if you want to consider like a central mid that tends to play more defensively. But defenders, that may be, in my opinion, maybe the weakest area of the field for the Dash. Thoughts?
I would say not in the sense of weakest, but like we definitely have the least amount of depth there.
Okay, that's fair.
And for a while I would have agreed with you, but I think we've kind of like grown since the last year and a half. I mean, first of all, like I know she's only played like 3 or 4 games, but having the former or the previous defender of the year for the NWSL, Chris Tedesco, on our team, that's incredible. I think that's one of the best signings we could have had that no one expected. If we want to talk about underrated players, I think no one's brought up the fact that Ali Prysock, who ominously just vanished like from last season, went on loan in France and came back, and now she's starting every game right alongside Katie Naughton. I mean, like, again, I feel like a lot of the goals against the Dash this season have just been like, I mean, and I'm talking about in this sense, like games that were close have just been, like your brain just like pausing for a second, just like, oh, like, these kinds of stupid mistakes. But like, I think that partnership of like Naughton and Prysock have just been like, they've been shoring it up. The fact that they're both been able to hold it down, like, and also if we want to talk about the way that they distribute, I think those two together have been like the pairing that no one expected to be as good as they are, to be, one that carries us into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. Prisak definitely has been an unsung hero this season. Again, as you've noted, kind of stepped in, coming from what felt like from nowhere. Not a player that was necessarily heavily involved for the Dash. The prior season ended up going out to France, as you noted, and then came back and suddenly is a stalwart defensively at center back. Nobody saw that coming. I mean, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Jen Cooper. You did not see that coming. But that is, that is to some extent what I expect from Juan Carlos Amoros and a Sarah Loudon, being able to pinpoint those players that maybe they need an opportunity somewhere else to get just a bit of a different perspective. Or just of a different view, if you will. Sometimes a different view of the field, a different perspective on the pitch, sometimes off the pitch, sometimes just a change of location. But either way, yeah, she's been just outstanding at center back. And of course, Katie Naughton. I mean, you can't say enough about Katie Naughton, but to be fair, everybody just expects Katie Naughton to be great. But the only reason I said I think, in my opinion, the weakest link is because I feel like, even though it's in my opinion, a fairly young attack, unless you're counting in Govan, a fairly young attack for the Dash, I feel like even though they're very young, they have a lot of very good pieces in various positions that can do it. And I think that, to me, that makes them very strong across the board. I think they're strong in the midfield a lot of the times, and they're strong in the attack. And so that just kind of, and they're not, I don't care what you have to say about Jane Campbell. They're strong at goalkeeper. So if there is a weak link on the Dash, it would be the defense, in my opinion.
It's definitely a fair point, for sure.
And that's kind
It's
of
just
more what I was going for.
Yeah, and God, it's one of those things, like, God or whoever forbid that, there's an injury, because we really do not have the depth for that. It's like having those two as our, like, having both Pricelock and then Naughton both as our CVs, they've really, like, they were those stalwart defenders. It's just like we've really been, like, maneuvering, like, JC has really thought about, like, how do you play the left and right back positions, because we've seen a lot of Garris and Alozi sometimes playing those positions, and for me, I personally, you don't put an attacker and a right or left back position, just not because, like, they can not do the job well. I mean, they could, they're those players that can, they're just dynamic wherever they are on the pitch. It's just, if you put them in those positions, then they're not going to be as dynamic and bring what they need for the team. Like, if you put Garrison left back or right back, then she's not over helping scoring assists or putting in assists and scoring goals. It's just one of those things that sure, they can be great on the sides. It's just you need them where they need to be. And it's just, with that in mind, we really don't have too much depth in the fullback positions either. So that's where, like, if you constantly have, moving those positions in and out with different players, there's a reason why they come at us on those sides instead of just straight into the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So George says trade Groom ASAP. What are your thoughts? I don't know what to think
I don't
about
know if
that.
I agree with that. I really don't. There are definitely times where, like, you put Groom on, and if you're able to isolate her, then it's easy. It's just as easy as being, like, pocketed, like right in the middle of the field. But, like, I think she's a great player who's been able to be just as dynamic as Vigiano in terms of, like, pushing the ball forward. I mean, I think George is right. We do need a true number 10 role on the field. You have that, and Ebony Salmon and everyone else will be able to move in and, like, score the goals, because a lot of our goals nowadays are, aside from set pieces, they're coming from a lot of wingers coming in with, like, either Nichelle Prince or Maria Sanchez, or Ryan Garris coming in from the sides, throwing the balls all straight into the box. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But there comes a point where you really need to, like, open up the center, and I truly think that Groom can, but she definitely plays more of a diamond, like more of that dynamic center forward role, even though she kind of is more of a her true position is in midfield, but she does seem like more of the scoring type rather than like that number 10. But I definitely think she didn't bring it to the table. I don't think she should be traded or sold or any of that. But
Yeah,
if you
I was going to say, I tend to think of Groom as more like a false nine. She's not necessarily the one who's going to be at the top of the diamond or the top of the spear, but she's going to be that player who's going to find herself in that position frequently because that striker is a lot of times going to peel off one way or the other, or they're going to draw a defender, and that's going to free up Groom to potentially be able to get an open look at goal. I think Groom has had her struggles this season. I don't think anybody can deny that, but she's also had her moments, and the playoffs are all about moments. So I would not write her off at this point as being pivotal to this run into the playoffs. And I guess we'll see come on the 16th, one way or the other. I don't think you necessarily consider trading Groom at this point. I don't know, what level of value she's going to necessarily bring on the trade market at this point. But I also think that that's somebody who's also capable of helping be a team leader. And I do think this team, needs, one or two additional one of those types of players. They've got plenty right now, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't hurt to have somebody like that coming off the bench. Like you said, we're not very deep, so why would you want to thin yourself even more at the depth level and pull her away? I mean, certainly formationally and I think tactically, we don't play to Groom's strengths anymore. But I still think she's a player that, late in a match, the last 10 to 15 minutes, if you put her in the right position, you give her the right opportunity, that's who you want in front of goal. That's who you want at the top of the box. That's who you want flying in with a header. Anybody remember the airplane header? I certainly do.
And not to beat a dead horse, but really it was those moments in the Challenge Cup that brought her to Dash fame, and fame amongst other teams as a very likely threat to come at you at goal. And you can't say that can't happen again.
Yeah,
absolutely not. It's like you said, these moments, and she's fully capable of doing so. And who knows if she brings home the title for us? Hey, she just showed everyone why Shea Groom is a necessary player for the Houston Dash.
Definitely, for sure, 100%. Well, we hit my mark on the amount of time I wanted to talk about the Dash. Hurrah! I'm excited for that. 30 minutes about Dash makes me very happy because that doesn't happen with Mark.
Did not feel like 30 minutes. I'm not gonna lie.
Welcome to the show. That's how it usually tends to go. Now let's take 30 minutes on the topic that we need to talk about. Maybe it's not the favorite topic of everybody right now, but let's talk the Yates investigation. Let's talk about the report. Let's talk about what has happened since. Hattie, this is your ball to roll, buddy. I'm gonna follow in line.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know about the Yates investigation yet, after the whole scandal release from the report written by Meg Linehan for The Athletic back in last October, the USSF, the United States Soccer Federation, initiated a investigation which had Sally Yates, the former Attorney General for the United States, who now I don't necessarily remember the name of her law firm. Oh, sorry, I just froze for a second.
You're good. You froze because you're still here.
Yeah, no, my screen went black.
Of course it did, because this would be the time that it would do that, right?
Yeah, that's yeah, King and Spalding. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going until you can't hear me anymore.
No, we hear you. Keep going.
So yeah, the U.S. Soccer Federation initiated the investigation, and it took them about a year at this point, and the report came out this Monday. And while it didn't really it didn't really say what we didn't know already in terms of the big individuals responsible. It showed us who knew, and it really showed us how bad it was. And it really, because the initial report was just scratching the surface. And this report really showed who knew what. And it really, again, I can't understand how bad it was undersold of like what was done and who it was done to. And really, if it wasn't for the, brave act, the bravery of like the four and everyone else who came forward, like Sinead Farley, Mona Shim, Kai McCullen, Aaron Simon, you wouldn't see these people like coming, those who it's just, it's hard to put the words together. It's just the fact of what they did and how they kept getting away with it. It was just maniacal, like, to say at the least. But what this report ended up showing, it showed that the teams initially, that teams like Portland Thorns, Chicago Red Stars, and Racing Louisville, yeah, those three specifically, and we're all impeding the investigation leading up to the release in their own ways, and for what they've all done. Because with Sally Yates, who in her investigation, she was investigating a few of the coaches leading up to it, namely Christy Hawley, who served his time or was playing or was coaching over at Racing Louisville, Rory Dames over with Chicago, and Paul Riley when he was with Portland, and then afterwards with North Carolina, and also in addition when he was with the WPS, I believe, for the Philadelphia Independence. And so, yeah, it was. We're talking about a 300-page report that really delved into not only like players' recounts of the different coaches, but as well as it really highlighted who in the NWSL knew of the reports filed against people like Paul Riley and Rory Dames. And it turns out that not only was it known from like top down, like we had Portland's own managerial team and owner who knew about this and chose to do nothing, and not only facilitated like Paul Riley's like they gave him a glowing recommendation which got him hired with North Carolina. It's just, we had, like you're talking about, from the club level, the top, and then as well as the top of the United States Soccer Federation. You had head coach. It was, sorry, with the screen not up. I can't. It's a little harder to remember the names, but let me just pull it up over here.
Pull it up on your phone.
Yeah,
because you're gonna have to apparently.
Yeah, the former head coach who coached the U.S. national team, women's national team back in 2019, as well as the former president, the former NWSL chief director, and the list just goes on. We're talking about everyone who's at the top knew and as well as the current head coach, Vlatko.
Talking about Jill Ellis?
Jill Ellis, yes. Oh my God, I don't know why I didn't remember her last name. But yes, Jill Ellis knew as well. And it's, again, we're talking about like multiple, like 6 players who came forward and just highlighted exactly who sent what, who knew what. And at the end of the day, it just showed how deep the rot was, and it went all the way to the top.
And I think if I remember correctly when we were talking earlier, it also goes all the way to the deepest levels in terms of downward as well, even into the youth levels and the youth organizations that exist. And that to me is kind of a scary proposition, right? Because if you're not taking care of it at the youth level, it's going to pervade itself into everywhere else. It's a trickle up effect almost in a way. I have to think that it starts at the youth level. It's allowed, it's not accepted necessarily, but it's also not dealt with And those coaches just continue to make their way up. Those personnel continue to make their way up through the ladder, all the way, to some of the highest positions. And to your point, it is an absolute disgrace for the U.S. Soccer Federation, for NWSL, for Portland, for Chicago, for North Carolina to some extent, and even all the way to Racing Louisville. There's just so much of the culture that has existed for so long that, again, it wasn't accepted, but it certainly was not dealt with. That to me is the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from the investigation was that, certainly there were plenty of, individuals who didn't accept it for what it was, that they weren't, part and parcel to what happened, but they were willing to be, what's the word? Willing to be accomplices in a way, willing accomplices, in that they didn't do anything about it. In fact, if anything, they tried to cover it up so that, that they didn't have to deal with it at all, that they were more concerned about a potential public backlash. Hello, you're looking at, how many years later, and now, now you're very well got such a black eye stain at this point that you're probably not going to be able to continue your career in any way, shape, or form. But it's damning. It is absolutely damning from the highest level to the lowest level. And I think, and I'm proud of what the Portland Thorns, supporter groups put out in a statement, that they're going, that they basically said something's got to be done, at the organizational level. And until it is, and, and I guarantee you that what they've seen in terms of just so far has not been enough, that they're going to ask for a whole lot more. But it's just now, right? We're just at the precipice of this summit. We've reached that peak, so to speak, and there's still 2 peaks off in the distance that are still in the, in process. But I look at it and, and credit, good call out, Roosh. I credit Alex Morgan for a lot of this, because she was not willing to sit on her hands and not let, she used her stature to really force the issue. And huge credit to Meg Linehan for stepping up and being willing to take on such a massive story and do it in a way with a lot of respect to the players who suffered through this, to do it with respect to what took place in such a disgusting and disgraceful way, but to do it in such a wonderfully covered, thoroughly researched. I mean, she put in so many hours. Meg Linehan deserves so much love and respect for what she did from a media perspective and a journalism perspective.
Absolutely.
And
it took,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's really the legwork she put into that. It took a lot of effort, not only for her to get all the pieces together, but also the fact that you had Sinead Farley and Mana Shim come forward, especially after all the abuse they took. And it's just, if anyone, if I knew anyone who had to go through something like that, it's such a soul-tearing thing. And the fact that they all came together and, they didn't stop. They didn't just give up. And they easily just could have. This wasn't something like a simple scandal that just broke. This was, layers and layers of a system that truly you made sure that, the people responsible were always protected.
Yep.
They did not protect the players. They took no effort to protect the players. There was no form of no institutionalized way for them to, have them report, these abusers. And just to clarify, when I did this, it's because everything came back and started working again. So,
oh, nice. I didn't even see it because I was looking at chat, because there's been a lot of chat messages.
Yeah, I lost that, so hope I'll just let you there. But anyways, the fact that there was no way to not that there was no way, but they really took no effort to create. Um, they took no effort to create a way for flagging down, like having red flags for anyone coming through this, like, any new coaches. The fact that you had Christy Hawley, who didn't actually have a license, a United States coaching license, and the fact that he was able to, get hired by Sky Blue, which later became Gotham, and then into Racing Louisville. And then you had like both Rory Dames in the youth system, being able, like, abusing like teenagers, and like, just to specify, he was more or less errant. Like, he did more of a verbal abuse, and more so like just carrying into them like psychological abuse, and that he was doing that way early in the youth system, and they took him and he went straight to women's pro football. And the fact that there was no barrier to check people, like checking the youth systems, him as well as Richie Burke, who he was way before the story got broken, and he was fired for his abuse in Washington, for the Washington Spirit specifically. And if it wasn't, there was no barriers, there's no ways to flag them. And the fact that it took not only one report, but the report, and then as well as the investigation results, for the federation to finally start thinking, okay, we need to start enacting these changes. It's just downright like tragic. Like, how when you're creating a organization like the NWSL, when you're creating a league like that, you leave no way for people to protect themselves, no framework. It's a travesty. Like, how do you let that happen, and how do you choose to be negligent about that? There's no other thing to say that other than those responsible, they need to go. This happened while we were in the middle of talking about the Dynamo, but it looks like that Arnon Whistler, the owner of Chicago Red Stars, was just removed from the ownership board. And I'm not sure to what extent, but it looks like he was just removed from from the head of the board. Whether that means he'll sell the team or not, we'll see.
Yeah, he's not making team decisions anymore as on the board, which is, it's a step. It's similar to what Portland did. It's a step. There's a lot of things that have happened with them as well in just the last day since this report was released. But I think what frustrates me more than anything is reading these articles, whether it was The Athletic or it was Yahoo's article or it was another article that was put out by I don't even remember what organization put it out. It wasn't The Athletic, it was a different organization, but another article that went out, and basically it was ESPN actually, and it talked about how in the investigation in the report, they made it very clear that they were proactively hindered, whether intentionally or otherwise, that's up for discussion, but proactively hindered from progressing the investigation at times by the lack of expediency in receiving requested documentation, having conversations, and specifically around those three organizations in terms of Racing Louisville, in terms of Portland Thorns, and in terms of Chicago Red Stars. And to me, that is the most disheartening thing, because it is at that point that those organizations, whomever is at the highest level, realized their hand was caught in the goddamn cookie jar, and they knew that they were screwed. They knew that they were going to get pinned to the board for it, and they tried to cover it up. They again for another time. And huge credit to Sally Yates for doing her due diligence to dive that in depth, to do that many interviews, to talk to that many people, to go through that much documentation. You can't come out with a 700-page report without doing that much, 300-page report, sorry, without doing that much without doing that much legwork, without doing that much due diligence. We all knew that this was going to take a while to come out, but I don't think anybody was anticipating a 300-page report. And it is a credit to Sally's intention when she stepped in to say, I'm going to do this. I am going to investigate this at the behest and request of USSF, at the behest and request of NWSL and WSLPA. I am going to investigate this, and I'm going to do this the way that it should be done, because there absolutely could have been somebody that was brought in that wasn't going to do it at that level, and it would have just been whitewashed. It would have just been swept under the rug. Yeah, we did our investigations. We found the incidents that they were talking about, but we didn't find any wrongdoing by the organizations. Whatever. No, Sally put it out there for black and white. There is no question. These organizations didn't just fail themselves. They didn't just fail their fans. They didn't just fail their teams and their organizations. They failed the NWSL, and they failed women's soccer at every level along every step of the path. And to me, that is the most disheartening thing, because you can no longer claim, if you are Merritt Paulson or if you're Whistler, you can no longer claim that this was just something you needed to deal with internally. No, the reality and the truth is that you were doing everything in your power to avoid dealing with it. You are willing to sacrifice the well-being mentally, psychologically, physically of your players, the people that you are paying money to go out and play a sport for you, people that were bringing in fans. You are willing to sacrifice their dignity. You are willing to sacrifice their well-beings simply so that you didn't have to publicly, come to terms with what was going on. There is no escaping it now. There is no hiding from it now. You will forever have a black mark, and I hope they realize that. I hope they understand that they will not be able to go anywhere in terms of women's soccer at this point moving forward in any organization. They need to have lifetime bans, as far as I'm concerned, not just in women's soccer in NWSL, but I think they need to have lifetime bans served or delivered to them by U.S. Soccer Federation, that they cannot coach, they cannot own, they cannot manage at any level going forward. I don't care if it's men's soccer, I don't care if it's women's soccer. That no longer matters. It is soccer, period. And they have absolutely ruined not just the game in the U.S., but they've ruined it internationally. I'm thankful that there are starting to be more and more players that are speaking out in other countries. Spain is a perfect example. There have been other reports. Look, we all know, even though it is very hush-hush, we all know about Vera Pauw when she was here, and also from South Africans that played for her reputation. And somehow that didn't come out in this, which surprised me. But, there's a lot of this is not just an NWSL issue. This is not just a Portland issue or a Chicago issue or a North Carolina issue or a Louisville issue. This is a soccer issue. And until we take it that seriously, until we as fans, until we as sponsors, until we as organizations and leagues and managers and presidents and everything else all the way across the world, I'm talking to the highest level, to FIFA directly, until we take it seriously at every level, and until we institute at every level opportunities for players to report harassment, to report abuse, to report assault. Until we provide them mechanisms, we have failed them. We have failed the sport, and we have failed the players. And to me, that is the thing that hurts me the most.
Yeah, 100%. There's no other way to say it. We just have to go as fans now. The thing that we can do for them now is to put each of these owners, everyone who is responsible, to put them to the fire. It's time for them to go. There's no more half measures. And I know you credited the Portland's supporter groups, and I'm glad that they're taking the direction now. It's just a year ago when they were just taking half measures. I think they said, how do we support the team without working with the FO, and they had these small boycotts, and I just think it shows after everything that happened this year that wasn't successful. It's time to put them to the fire. It's time to tell the sponsors, call and let them know that this is who you're supporting, and you have to go all the way in and just say, we will not support you anymore. That's how you break them. That's how you get them out. Otherwise, you'll have someone like Merritt Paulson. They'll just fire, they'll fire Wilkinson and the other guy. The
other guy. Yeah. That's what,
yeah.
Hey, he doesn't even deserve a name anymore. Just the other guy. I completely agree with that.
That's scumbag.
Yep.
You fired them. And he's okay. Maybe that might be it. No, it's time to go. There's no way you can there's no amount of boilerplate statements you could put out saying I'm sorry, or this is the darkest day in my life. It's the darkest day because you got caught.
Yep.
And not only got caught for what you did know, it's what you kept impeding after that.
Yep.
Like the fact that even after all that, they're still complicit and trying to make sure like this information didn't come out, bro. Like, not to say like you didn't just completely screw yourself, but that just shows what kind of guy you are.
Yeah.
That shows what kind of business you're in. You're trying to stay in the game and just it's all about you and no one else, and that's not what this organization is about. That's not what soccer is about. It's not one owner. It's the players. It's the fans. And you failed everyone. You have failed everyone on every level. And the fact that you keep like doing the actions that they're doing, such as like silencing fans. This in the specific case of where they got one of the fans who was protesting in the middle of the game. They called her father to get her to get off, which
that was the singer of the national anthem at the Portland Thorns game.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just all these underhanded tactics to just silence fans. That's who you are, and that's how history will remember you. And there's nothing else for you to do other than just leave, because there's no way you come back without you help create a toxic environment that is like the NWSL. You can't live with the rot anymore. And then the fans need to know that there needs to be accountability, whether it's on the club level or on the federation level. The fans need to do this. They need to hold their organizations, the teams that they love, accountable. If they don't, then it's more of the same. It's business as usual. And there's no way we can have that moving forward.
I am incredibly thankful for Jessica O'Neill. This highlights the importance of having somebody in a position of, in this case, president of Houston Dash operations, effectively, but someone who has not rested. There were accusations made, and we don't even know what they were. Accusations made against James Clarkson. The league recommended, but it wouldn't have mattered. I have a feeling they would have done this anyways. The Dash suspended indefinitely James Clarkson. I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's innocent. It's not for me to decide. I don't have any part in that. But I credit the Houston Dash for doing it immediately. And I know Jessica wasn't involved at that time. I understand that. But I think from just an organizational perspective, it was so starkly different from the approach that every other organization had up to that point. They essentially set the trend for how it was going to go, and they left no question. They left absolutely no question. The way that they handled it ensured that there was no chance of it continuing, even if it was not a realistic accusation. And again, we don't know. We have no idea. But no matter what, I think it was the right move by the organization. We still, we may never know the outcome of the air quote investigation around those accusations or that accusation against James Clarkson. But I credit the Dash for doing the right thing from the very beginning when it came to those accusations, once they were made privy to them. And there was not a lot of time. That was the fastest I have ever seen an organization move related to that level of accusations across, I think, just about any league. I mean, that was within 24 hours of them finding out. They were already making the move. And
less. It was even less than that, because the moment they found out, they took straight to action.
Yeah.
This is like there was a bit of a roundtable with season ticket members, right, like the week that it happened, because as soon as they knew, they took action, and then even I want to say it was like 8 hours afterwards, they announced it to the world.
Yeah.
So they're setting. I feel like they are setting the trend that this is what you need to do. You have, in order to protect the players, you have to announce everything. You need to let everyone know. You can't let lizards or snakes like these just go burrow and walk away. With the fact that Rory Dane was able to once the NWSL final was over, he resigned and walked away. Like, you're shitting me. You're absolutely no. You're not. You don't let these guys just walk away into the sunset. No, we're at the very least these are criminal actions, because the fact that in the Sally Yates report, they deemed, like, they had a team psychologist come in and deemed that over 70% of the team was experienced some form of psychological trauma,
Yeah.
and he walked away. No, absolutely not. And so
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just tying up saying that it comes to the point where we need, like, there can be no more, like, organizations that backpedal. And the fact that the Houston Dash were able to tackle this with expediency and also being true to, like, on every account, that's what every club needs to do. Every club needs to say the truth, honor the players, and allow for these reforms and these different mechanisms to be enacted to give the players the power and the control they need to protect themselves from predators like Paul Riley and Rory Dames.
Absolutely, 100% yes. And it it does fall on fans to some extent to keep these leagues, keep these organizations, keep these coaches, these managers, these presidents, these front offices, keep the federation, keep all of these people accountable for what is happening and what has happened. And to your point, not let people just walk away, but ensuring that, that due diligence is done, and that they can't just hand wave because that person has left or has resigned, whatever it may be. And again, huge credit goes to so many people at this point for not just hand waving, not just being willing to capitulate and cave, but taking a stand, and finally really truly holding everyone accountable at every level across the board. And it definitely makes me feel better in that regard about the situation. But again, much to your point and my earlier point, this is not something that's going to go away. It's not something that it is going to be a stain that exists on this league. It exists in women's soccer. It's going to exist internationally for a very long time. It is going to be something that these players deal with for the rest of their lives. It is going to be something that members of those organizations deal with for the rest of their lives. It is going to be something that fans have to deal with, psychologically. And we need to show support to the players and let the players know that we have their back. And we also need to hold sponsors' feet to the fire. There are sponsors out there that sponsor these teams that have not said anything yet. They haven't condemned anything yet. And to me, that is the biggest, the biggest red flag of all, because these are people willing to put money into these organizations. But then when something like this takes place, you can't find them. You can't get them to make a statement to really hold the organization's feet to the fire, with the exception of, as far as I'm aware, the only one that really has as of yet, Barrel Craft Spirits out of for Racing Louisville. Alaska Airlines, apparently. Thank you, Roosh. I don't get on Twitter nearly as much as I used to. There might be one or two others, but they're still very large, sponsors that haven't. Go ahead.
For heads up, Alaska Airlines, they really said nothing in terms of like what they're planning on doing. They're not holding Portland to the fire. They said we're just going to wait and hear for more.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
We want to talk about what a sponsor should look like. Barrel Spirits, they're setting an example for what sponsors need to do. Alaska Airlines, do better next time.
I love the ending to the Barrel Craft Spirits statement. Our continued sponsorship will wholly depend on the team and NWSL's response to creating swift and meaningful change. Much due respect to Barrel Craft Spirits, I may have to make a trip to Louisville and grab me a bottle of some bourbon to bring home, because man, that is very well crafted and very well said. And I hope that many more sponsors across NWSL, across soccer, across the world take a hardline stance to that level. World Cup is coming up in just a few months. Seems like a perfect time for some sponsors to really hold some FIFA feet to the fire. But with that said, we are at the end of our show. We didn't even get to do predictions this week. That's okay. I hope you, much like me, have felt like this show has not been an hour and a half. It has flown by, to say the least.
Yeah.
Hattie, thank you for coming on the show. And I know there's a few people that are curious, not really because they already know, but for those that may be listening later on the podcast edition, how can they follow you on social media? Where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm mostly active there. H-Town Hattie. Yeah, shout me out, say hi. We can talk about anything about WOSO, Dynamo, or even soccer in general, and then we'll have a great time.
And we will forgive you for being an Arsenal fan. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
No. I said just kidding. I said just kidding. No.
Okay,
Nope, we're not going there. We're not going
to turn an hour and 30 minutes to 2
3
hours.
hours to 3 hours.
Yeah,
No, what I did want to say, guys, is one last thing. Hattie will shy away from saying this, but definitely, if you have a chance, check out The Surge. Hattie is our director of Dash things. I don't remember what your official title is. Director of Dash for Surge, director of Dash things, all things. But definitely check out The Surge and get a chance to support Hattie, support what The Surge are trying to do by growing the women's soccer support and Dash support specifically.
And most importantly, support the Dash.
Say that again.
I said, and you're talking about support. I said, and most importantly, support the Dash.
And most importantly, support the Dash, especially on October 16th by buying your $7 ticket today on SeatGeek, and go get your ticket to the October 16th first ever NWSL Houston Dash playoff match here in Houston. Come on, you can't beat it. You really can't. With that said, guys, certainly appreciate you joining us. It's been a little bit longer show than normal, but we definitely appreciate it. Huge shout out to Golasso.media. Go check out Golasso.media for all your player likeness merchandise and gear. Thank you guys.
Great shirts, great designs. You'll love them.
Great shirts, great designs. That needs to be the slogan. Great shirts, great designs. It almost sounds like a Kohl's slogan or something. But seriously, guys, appreciate y'all so much. Appreciate y'all's support throughout this entire season. We will probably have one more episode to close out the year. I don't know if it'll be next week. Probably not next week. But we will let you know when we do have that final episode. And who knows, maybe it'll be after the NWSL Cup final when the Dash are hoisting the NWSL Cup. I don't know about you, Hattie, but I would be stoked for that.
Oh my God.
I might cry tears.
You'll see me there. I'll be in Washington, D.C. I'll be crying.
Actually, I have hookups there, so I might go too. But yeah, again, thanks guys. Have a great night. And as always, hold it down, H-Town.
Take care, everyone.
Pero no me atrevo a textearte. Tú solo bailas en mi mente, mi amor. No